Hello, I'm Michael Topham, technical writer for digital photo, and welcome to this Photoshop Made Easy video lesson that's going to focus on cloning and healing some of those imperfections out of your photographs using Element 6. When we're out with our cameras, we all try our hardest to make sure that unwanted distractions or imperfections are kept to a minimum. But no matter how hard you try, some of these will always tend to creep into your shot. Whether it's a small black smudge of dirt on your camera's sensor or a building crane in an urban skyline, distractions can be very frustrating, so it's very important to know how to remove them should you need to. We're going to work through a selection of cloning and healing tools that are offered to us in the toolbox in Elements. We'll firstly take a look at the clone tool and show you how we can use selections to make sure we don't encroach and damage other areas of the image. Then we'll move on and start to experiment with both the Spot Healing Brush tool and the Healing Brush and see what they have to offer us. We're going to start off by using the Clone tool from the toolbox, which is going to be used to remove all these cranes out of the cityscape skyline. Firstly, we need to create a new layer to work on, and I'm just going to bring in my Layers palette into view. Now we want to make a duplicate layer that we're going to work on, so all you need to do is just go up to Layer in your menu bar and go down to Duplicate Layer. Now this is actually going to be the layer that we're working on, and we're going to be retouching the image, so I'm just going to give it a name of Retouch. Once you've done that, just hit OK, and you'll notice how that duplicate layer has appeared in your Layers palette. Make sure that you're selected on this new Retouch layer, as we're going to be working on it all the way through the technique. And I'm just going to move my Layers palette back out of the way. Time now to go over to the toolbox and select on the Clone tool, or equally you could press S on the keyboard, which is its shortcut. The Clone tool is going to allow us to take a sample of the image and then use any newly selected pixels in any area that we want. So for example, in this image, we'll want to take a sample of the sky that's quite close to the crane and then use these new pixels for replacement. It's extremely important to get in nice and close if you want to do the best cloning possible, and we're going to zoom in to about 200% by pressing Ctrl and plus on the keyboard. Once you've zoomed in, you can just press down the spacebar on the keyboard and drag about the image until you find the actual area that you want to start cloning. Now I've decided that I'm going to tackle this crane first of all, and you can see that it's going to be rather tricky as we've got this building to contend with and we don't want to damage any of those building pixels. If we make an inverse selection, this will help us on this occasion. We just need to choose the lasso tool from the toolbox and make sure that we've got a feather of about 2 pixels. Once you've done that, you can actually just make your selection around the outside of this building, just as I am. So with a small selection made around the outside of the building, just like that, and the marching ants up on my screen, I can inverse that selection by going up to Select and then down to Inverse. Just double check that you're still on your Retouch layer in your Layers palette, which I am, so that's good, so I'll just move it back out of the way. And then we want to go back into the Clone tool, so go back into the toolbox again and select the Clone tool. In your options bar, just choose a size of about 21 pixels, make sure the mode is set to normal, and we're going to use an opacity of 100%. With the marching ants still up on the screen, we can still carry out the cloning with the Clone tool. Hold down Alt on your keyboard and you'll notice how the brush turns into this pixel selection picker. So all we need to do is make sure that we hold down Alt on the keyboard, choose the sky pixels that we're going to use as replacement, and then we can just start brushing them in over the crane, just like I'm doing. The inverse selection that we have made will only let you brush inside the selected area, and it will protect you brushing over the edge of the building, so make sure you brush right up against all these marching ants. It's important to make sure that you take frequent pixel selections by holding down Alt on the keyboard, selecting sky pixels, and then replacing them over the crane. We're starting to move away from the building now, so we can just hold down the spacebar on the keyboard and just move up the image slightly, and then again just hold down Alt, choose some sky pixels and use those as the replacement, just brushing those in and replacing the crane. We've also moved away from the building slightly so we can afford to increase the size of our brush, and you can do that by pressing the right square bracket key on the keyboard. This will make it a little bit quicker, so you can just keep taking your pixel selections and just work up through the image. Once you've worked up to the top of the crane with the clone tool, you can zoom out by pressing Ctrl and minus on the keyboard, and then you can deselect the marching ants by pressing Ctrl and D on the keyboard. Just bringing my layers palette back into view, and by clicking on the eye visibility layer icon just on the end of the layer there, you can actually turn off that layer, which is the retouch layer, which shows the original image. And then if you see, just keep concentrating on this area right here, if you click that layer back on, you can see how we've successfully got rid of that first crane. Now I'm going to apply this technique to all of the other cranes that you can see in this skyline, and that's going to take me about 10 or 15 minutes, so I'll rejoin you in a minute. And here we go. I've cleaned up the skyline, and it's only taken me about 10 or 15 minutes to run that clone tool over those cranes, and they're now all out of shot. I just want to show you the difference between before and after, so I'm just going to bring in my layers palette into view, and just click on the layer visibility eye icon on the retouch layer, shows the original image, and then clicking it again shows the actual retouching that we've done with the clone tool. Let's now turn our attention towards two other tools that can be used to remove blemishes, distractions and sensor dirt. The Spot Healing Brush tool is very similar to the Healing Brush tool, and it appears just above it in the toolbox. The main difference between the two is that the Spot Healing Brush tool automatically samples the pixels around the imperfection, and then uses these for replacement. The main advantage of this is that you don't have to actually specify a sample point, meaning it's quicker and easier to use than the healing brush. There's quite a noticeable area in my image that is suffering from some sensor dirt, and I'm just hovering my mouse over it now just to show you where it is. We're going to get rid of this dark smudge, and we're going to do that by using the Spot Healing Brush, so just go across simply into your toolbox and select it from the list. Always remember that you need to get in nice and close to the blemish to make sure that you do a good job on it. So I'm just going to press Ctrl and plus on my keyboard and then hold down on spacebar and just drag across so that we get a clear view of that blemish. Before we actually start work on this little blemish, just make sure that the size is slightly bigger than the actual imperfection, and it just covers it. That's a little bit too big. About 85, something like that will be perfect. And then make sure the type is actually set to proximity match. So with your Spot Healing Brush settings all set up, all you need to do is just run this tool over the imperfection just like I am, and you'll notice how it automatically just disappears. The Healing Brush is a little bit different to the Spot Healing Brush, and we're going to use it to remove a distracting aeroplane that's just inside the frame above the cathedral. Go back in to the Spot Healing Brush, hold it down in the toolbox, and you'll be given the option to click on the Healing Brush tool. Just head up into your options bar and have a brush of about 45, with a mode set to normal and the source set to sampled. We're going to do something very similar that we did with the clone tool, and all we need to do is hold down Alt on the keyboard, choose the pixels again that we want to use for replacement, so I'm just going to click underneath the aeroplane around here, those are the pixels that I want to use, and then just run that across the aeroplane, and it's going to look much tidier now. So there we go. We've used 3 different cloning and healing tools to clean up various parts of this image, and it's looking all the better for it. If I just click on the layer visibility eye icon on the retouch layer, it shows the image in its original state, and it looks rather messy with all these building cranes, sensor dirt, aeroplanes and litter that's scattered across the floor. With some careful work, we've transformed it into this, a much cleaner, tidier, more aesthetically pleasing image to look at. I hope this Photoshop Made Easy video lesson has given you a good insight into the cloning and healing tools that are on offer in Elements, and there's no better way than to start using them on some of your fantastic photographs.